We start by you stating your full name.
Elmarie Carr.
And where were you born?
I was born in West Point, Mississippi.
What are some of your earliest memories growing up?
One of my favorite memories of growing up is my sisters giving me a birthday party. And the birthday party consisted of baking sweet potatoes in the fireplace and over the ashes. And that, from that day on, sweet potatoes my favorite dessert, my favorite food, my favorite everything. Any kind of way, fried, stewed, baked, any kind of a way, sweet potatoes. And so that memory, it always come to my mind when you say my earliest memory of growing up.
Can you tell me a little what your family was like?
It was, my mom and dad had 7 children, so it was always busy around the house. We played together. We made up our own games. We lived in the country. Um, we rode on the wagon with the old Henry. My dad had a mule, and we all just had fun as children. Good, clean fun.
Can you tell me what the community was like?
Well, we initially lived in the country in West Point. Then we moved to a community called Tibby. And the most of my memories come from the Tibby community. And it was a close knit community because if we did anything wrong, if Mother and Dad wasn't at home, then Miss Patty Mae would get on to us because she lived right up the hill from us, and she was in hollering distance to tell on us time Mother and Daddy got back home. So we made sure it was just a community of caring people. We had 2 churches in the community that we supported each other, a Methodist church and a Baptist church, kind of traditional community. Uh, we had the old school at the edge of the community. At one point, we had a Head Start center in the community where my mom worked for a while. Everybody had gardens, of course, because that's where your food came from. You couldn't afford to go to the grocery store like I see my daughter doing, going to the grocery store every day. But so it was like a family. The community was like a family.
Can you remember any big events or activities that went on in your community?
Oh, yes. Every year, the first Sunday in July, we had homecoming at the Baptist church. And then the second Sunday, we had homecoming at the Methodist church. And that was the biggest, people that had migrated to Chicago, Detroit, it was a joy for them to come back home and celebrate. And of course, it was around the 4th of July. And so the community was booming. It was an exciting time. Everybody looked forward to that event every year.
What, in your opinion, made your community stand out?
I think the family atmosphere, I strongly believe in family. I think family should be first and foremost before anything else. And so that's what made Tibby stand out is the community, the family atmosphere.
What is your earliest memory with food?
Eating a lot. Uh, I've, I've always enjoyed eating. But the funnest part, mother would always have a garden. And of course, she made dad work in the garden with her. And so we always had, fresh tomatoes, fresh greens, um, watermelons. And actually, when my mom and dad would farm, we had huge. I mean, we had big fields of corn and all of that. And she would actually prepare our lunch in the field over a fire. And that's where I continued eating those sweet potatoes because she could make the best sweet potatoes over that fire in the field. And I mean, it would be hot out there, but we still, she gonna make sure we had a good balanced meal. And I tell my children even now, you need to add green vegetables to they don't believe in green vegetables for some reason. I've always fed them green vegetables, but having the natural grown food. Uh, I mean, we shucked the corn and it went right from the field to the table in our mouths. So that was exciting for me. Even now, I have a garden that it's a small garden, but I've been eating cucumbers and tomatoes. My granddaughter asked me, Granny, why are you leaving the cucumbers on the back porch? And so I have to bring those cucumbers in the house. But we made a cucumber salad. So yeah, eating fresh food and homegrown food, natural grown food just means a lot to me.
Was there any specific type of foods that were important to you or your family?
Yeah, those sweet potatoes. The sweet potatoes, cucumbers, watermelons, even our neighbor, uh, we called him, his name was Tom Ross, we called him Mr. Buster. But Mr. Buster had a big old field of watermelons. And my children have to hear me say this, but we used to sneak in his field and eat Mr. Buster's watermelons. And we would eat them right there in his field. So he told my parents that, all right, I'm going to trick them. And we didn't know this at the time. He said, I'm going to sprinkle some baking soda all over, over some of the watermelon. And I'm telling them this poison. So they'll stop coming up there eating up my watermelons and messing over my watermelon field. So that was kind of hilarious because we learned later on it was just baking soda Mr. Buster had put on those watermelons. But we going to that watermelon patch and eating Mr. Buster's watermelon, that was fun. That's a great time.
Can you tell me a little about the land you all owned?
In Tibby, we owned my grandmother, Emma, owned, like, they had about, 20, 30 acres on the hill, they would call it. Then they had like about 100 acres in the bottom where, we did most of the farming at. And so everybody kind of carved out pieces of land that they would build their home on. And that's what my mom did. We built a home on that. So we had, as a matter of fact, when my mom died, she said, I want this land to stay in the family. But she willed her home place to my baby daughter who lives in Oxford and couldn't really, live in that distance. So she eventually had to relinquish that home place. But it was where we grew up. Fun memories, walking from that home to church on dusty roads. All of those are just memories that, you treasure.
Has the way you get your food changed over time?
Yes. Yes. Well, for one thing, you end up going to the grocery store more than you need to. And after I left home and got married, and I mean, we were living in apartments where you couldn't raise your own garden. We used to put plants in buckets because my husband was from a family that grew their own food also. Their own pigs. Of course, we had pigs and hogs, and we were talking about lye soap earlier. We used to make our own soap to wash with, and So it has always been a part of our entire family to farm, to be uh, uh, work together. So try to retain our property, but sometimes it may be impossible to do as it was with my mom's property.
What does farming mean to you?
It means life. Um, Farming includes from growing your own food uh, to providing food for. I mean, Walmart food does not grow in Walmart. It has to be brought in by farmers. So I mean, and the sad thing, especially our younger generation, they just see as I can run to the grocery store. But when COVID hit and those grocery stores became empty looking, then I think a lot of people realize that this food does not grow in a grocery store. It does not grow in Kroger. It comes from someplace else. So I think now with that piece of people understanding that, I think it's going to encourage more people to start growing and sharing their wares that they've grown and made.
All right. What are some of the biggest changes that you've seen over time?
Biggest what?
Changes.
Mm, changes. Gosh. Well, one of the biggest changes, like the high tunnel uh, business. We didn't have a high tunnel when we were raising a garden, and somehow we ate year round. But I understand, and I think it's a great idea to have the high tunnels because it will afford people don't want to get wet. They have to be like my granddaughter. She loves running out in the rain and getting wet and collecting stuff. So people don't want, and so the high tunnel does provide for that. But that's been one of the biggest, um, changes that it just stood out to me. It's to the high tunnels.
That's all.
Am I done? I hadn't even gotten started yet.
It's okay. Can you tell us more about the work you've done in the community with people?
As far as farm,
Anything,
oh
the
my
work
God.
you've done,
Ooh.
because we know that you're pretty well known in the area and you have a lot of work experience. And I heard one day you talk about Girl Scouts, and I heard you talk about Emerson Family Center. So that's community, right? That's
Yeah.
building and developing people. Can you talk about the work that you've done in that regard?
Well, I once I get to talking now, you get me talking.
That's what we want.
But yeah, in '83, I was hired as the second African American in Girl Scouts, and it was called Prairie Girl Scout Council. And that was a challenge for me. I attended Jackson State University. I saw one or two white people walking on that campus back in 69 and 70. So I went to an all African American school. I graduated in 69. Oh, I just told my age. Uh, but so I had no relationships or never socialized or had any communication with Caucasian population. And of course, I was thrust into this position with Girl Scouts, all Caucasian folks. And so I had to really adapt. I had to step back on some things because I've always been pretty vocal about things, and I've always known of the history of black people and the slavery and how my mom would tell the story. of, I can't tell that one. It's just, it brings tears, I guess, to my eyes because having to oh my God, I am a weakling when it comes to certain things, and other things I'm real strong about. But I did have to step back in Girl Scouts when I started because it wasn't any black girls in the program. And of course, like I say, I'm strong in some things, and then some things I step back. But my first goal was black girls need to take advantage of these wonderful opportunities. And so I was on a mission, and I'm sure that the board of directors hired me for that reason because it wasn't fair, for our children not to take advantage of the wonderful things that Girl Scouts offers for girls. And so I went on a mission and I accomplished a lot of that. My children, my 4 daughters, graduated Gold Award girls. They've had opportunities to go through the White House. They've had that they may not been able to go any other way. And I chose neighborhoods like local neighborhood, Brooksville Garden area here in Starkville. And I served as a leader of the troop because I wanted those girls to have an opportunity. And I see some of the girls even today as adults. Hi, Ms. Brooks. Thank you. And so I continue trying to impact lives of families. I retired from Girl Scouts in 2017. Immediately went to work with the Starkville School District in 2017, and worked at Emerson. And there again, it was giving families opportunities to grow and to have them contribute. And my philosophy is to not to just give a person a fish, but to teach them how to fish so that they can continue and not depend on a system or individuals to take care of them. And so, that's what I did at Emerson for 10 years. I'm currently volunteering with the J.L. King Center. And my goal is still the same thing. You can't just hand people stuff. Just hand them stuff. You've got to build a person's self-esteem, make them feel good about who they are by giving them employment, letting them go to work every day, just like everybody else, and earn a living and provide for their families. There are no. Now, yes, people need a hand up sometime to get them through. But in the long run, teach them how to budget. If they are getting a $1,400 stimulus check, teach them how to use that wisely. I don't believe in just handing out. So I probably, Brian, you edited all this out because I probably went all over the place.
This is all perfect. It really is.
I'm sorry. I get emotional when it comes to children and families. because I've seen the results of how you can make a difference in a family life, and by training them. I taught parenting for 10 years, and I still have families that I work with that call me, thank you. I mean, it's been proven. You train and teach. I mean, that's why we have an educational system. So I don't know why we think we're supposed to patronize folks by giving them and let them go on about, and without even adults. You train adults. Adults are not too old to be trained. And they can do it. They can do it. We've just got to give them an opportunity and support them as they try to do it. Don't support folks and they will do it. The parents, they want to raise their children right. They want to know what to do, but you got to do it respectfully. You can't put a person down and expect them to do do the right thing. You can't put them down. You got to lift them up.
Man, I want to switch gears just a little because I know, having the experience you've had with different groups, somewhere culture was talked about, somewhere probably in your family, culture was embraced. Maybe the word culture wasn't used, but culture was certainly important. Can you talk about how the African American culture, how that has impacted you, or the things that African Americans embrace in terms of culture? How does that touch you in any way? And you can take that whichever way you want to.
Well, my mom had, and it came from her mom and her mom, so it was a culture. There are certain values that was instilled in us as children. And if we don't have values and principles, if we don't have something to stand on or stand for, and that old saying, if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. Black culture is a big part of who we are. It's a big part of what you will be in the future. You've got to have some kind of framework. You've got to have something. You don't do it just by osmosis, dropping out of the sky. You've got to have something to stand on. And that's what we had in our family, in our community, in the church we were in. There were certain things. And even today, one of my values, one of my principles, my daughters challenge me on it. If they have a boyfriend, they don't come to my house and stay with my daughter. I have 4 daughters. They don't do that. My mama didn't do it. Her mama didn't do it. That was the culture of our family, of that African American family, generations of it. Now, if you did something, you didn't let it be known. You didn't let it be known. Therefore, and you know what goes on in the dark, going to certainly come to the light. So you just didn't do it. And so it kind of shaped who you are to be a child of God and how God wants you to behave. And nobody's perfect. Nobody's perfect. I'm not even saying I'm perfect. And nobody is. You're going to mess up sometime. But you need some kind of basis. You need something to stand for, stand on. And I think that's real important. And I look forward to even my grandchildren having those values, that they are passed on down. Just like I'm raising goats to pass on down to my children. I told them, I said, my mom and dad didn't have the finances to pay for us to go to college. but they made sure we went to college. They encouraged, they couldn't afford it, but somehow, with the help of the good Lord, we went. Pretty successful family, I have to say, because there were certain things they stood for, and they didn't waver from it. They stood. I graduated Jackson State in '72, and didn't owe a dime because I made president's list every semester, and so they would give me my tuition and pay for this and pay for that. In addition, I worked. And so having strong work ethics, uh, all of these things, that's just part of what African American communities taught their children, not only in their immediate family, but Miss Patty May up on the hill taught us that. Mr. Buster taught us that. Uh, Reverend Norwood at the church taught us that. I mean, it was what was embedded in us. It's what made us as strong as we are today. It made it where when I started working, I couldn't stand in front of a group to even talk. My voice would actually tremble when I was sitting, and I just got, mother encouraged me, you can do this. And honey, I have actually, uh, Governor Winters knows me personally before. He, when he was governor, I met with him. I have a picture right now, him standing up hugging me, because I was laughing and talking with the governor of Mississippi. I've been to the White House. I will talk to anybody, but that's because I had support in my family. There were things that we did. Mother made us get up and say our Easter speeches every Easter. We had a Christmas program at church every Christmas. And that helped me. That helped me to shape who I am. I had a base to stand on.
You said, you were talking about Tibby was a caring community, and a lot of what you've talked about so far has to do with the way that folks have cared for each other and the care in your family. Could you talk a bit more about some of the specific ways that people cared for each other when you were growing up in Tibby?
Well, like when they killed a hog, we would actually kill the hogs every season, and everybody just shared. Everybody would. It wasn't, this is mine and I'm not gonna. They had a garden. If your okras didn't do well, then they're gonna give you okra. Give you okra. So, and it's still people in Tibby right now that has that, because it's so ingrained in the community, they have that same mindset that I'm going to do for you. We have a young, well, he's 85 now. I think he's about 85. He still goes around and cut older people's yards in the community, free of charge. So it's just, great. I mean, I have a cousin who carries people to the doctor. I mean, she's about 70, or no, she's older than that. She's about 75. So anybody has to go to the doctor, anybody needs to go to the grocery store, don't charge a dime for it. So it's just what you do. You help people because they need help, They can't drive now. And they did it when they were able to. So it just perpetuated. It just passed on down. So yeah, Tibby, I love Tibby. I live right across the highway from it now, but I'm still real connected. I had a family gathering this past weekend in that community. And so I love Tibby.
In my head, I think I know where Tibby is, but I'm probably wrong. So could you describe where it is in relation to where we are right now?
It's on Highway 45. Toward West Point, you take a right to Tibby. It has a sign out on 45. And you would take a left to come to Starkville, but you would take a right to go to Tibby. And when you get past the two churches facing each other, you in Tibby. And a lot of the people are passing on now because they are, elderly. Uh, the community has some rental properties in it now, but it still has a good, strong foundation there. And you still have, and some people are coming back home that grew up. So you'll still, I think Tibby will always be that base community that I grew up in. So.
Now, how many people lived in Tibby when you were a child?
Gosh, that's a good question because I never counted. I just knew everybody. So it might have been, gosh, I never knew like the population of Tibby. And I'm scared. I'm always skeptical about trying to guess at numbers. But we had a full busload of children that came out of the community. Um, the church, of course, the Baptist church would be filled with people every Sunday, and the Methodist church probably have about 50% less than, because for some reason the Baptists and they just, it's always been that way. So I don't know what the population was in Tibby, but it was small enough that we could embrace each other. You knew everybody. So if somebody didn't belong in Tibby, you knew that. So I don't remember the numbers though.
So but you knew everybody, and so when you're thinking about like knowing everybody, who are some of the people that come to mind that you knew when you were growing up?
Well, of course, Miss Patty May always stands out to me because she would always tell on me. And Miss Sarah lived right across the street from us. She showed me how to cut up greens. When she would gather her greens out, collard greens, she would roll them and roll them and roll them. Then she'd get a knife and cut them in pieces. So she was across the way. Baby doll was right up the sheet. All these people are deceased now. So, and Miss Willie Mae Graves and my Sunday school teacher, Miss Maddie Will Graves, she passed a long time ago, but she taught me a lot about United Methodism. So she was very memorable. And we had, at the time, we were in the old church. So we only had like the sanctuary. We didn't have like a fellowship hall and all of that. So the children had a little corner over in the sanctuary for their Sunday school. And then the adults would sit up front. I don't know how we did that with all that noise, but we learned a lot. We learned. I mean, she was a school teacher. So she knew how to teach for us to learn. She taught us the Apostle Creed, and she and her Mr. Harrison was her husband. And when we would go to the youth group out of town to another church, he would always drive us. And I remember him so clearly because he didn't have any teeth in his mouth. So he'd be driving and he'd get tickled and he'd throw his hands up off of that steering wheel, and it scared us to death. But he'd be so tickled, both his hands would go up, he'd be so tickled. But he always brought us back home safely. He took us and he brought us back home safely. So it's just so many people. Joe B. Amos, he's a goat farmer in Tibby right now. He's the one that goes around mow people's yard and older people and he helps take to the doctor too, back and forth. Gosh, who else down there? Conchali, he helped build the church. The men got together and built it. He was a carpenter. And then we had Mr. Robert Irvin. He was the brick mason. So that was another way people worked together because they would use their skill to come together. Now, Mr. Charlie was a member of the Methodist Church, and Robert Irvin, who was the brick mason, was a member of the Baptist Church. But he put the bricks on the Methodist Church, and they just worked together. And that just gives you, such a, it's a safety thing too. I mean, we would walk the street at night and not even worry about anybody trying to bother us or anything. You just, because everybody looked after each other. Everybody helped each other and looked after the children. And
Well, so I don't. I mean, I may have missed this, but I want to ask. So we have such a way of looking at society now and thinking it's not the same. It's not the same. But I think if we look hard enough, I think we can see some similarities. Like we can still see people who care for others. Who do you see any of that? Can you see parallels?
absolutely, as I was saying, like I have a I said I think she's about 70, maybe 73 or something. She still carries people to the doctor. She take them to doctor's appointments. She take them to the grocery store. Like I said, we had a family gathering this past weekend. I said, so you still running folks everywhere. And she just laughs. She thoroughly enjoys it. And I mean, she's a retired school teacher. She could be at home doing her thing, but she doesn't mind getting up and taking, and everybody's not as sweet. And she could take some of the meanest people to, to their appointments, and she enjoys it. And so yeah, there are still there are good people. There are still good people. Our world is a lot different now than when we were growing up, because I make sure my doors are locked every night now. Well, we didn't lock our doors. If somebody needed if Miss Patty Mae needed some flour, well, if Mother wasn't home, and she just she knew to go and get her some flour out of the house because the door was open. But you can't do that now. The environment is different. And I'm not sure even how that can be changed, because our leaders and our role models are so different. And I think a lot of problems that came about and became so acceptable is because of leadership. And role modeling is so important. You cannot say one thing and do something different that's unethical or crooked, evil. You can't think you can tell me it's raining outside, is what my husband always say, and yet you're urinating on me and I see you. So, yeah, I think that's what has happened in our society now, is that leaders think they can say one thing and they're doing something different. You can't do that, because, these young people, they see that, and most of the time they don't want to do what you tell them to do, but those are the times that they will do it when they see something negative. Then they want to take on that trait. But so don't do it in the first place, and we can train our children, our upcoming generation, a lot better if we acted the way we want them to act and behave in the way we want them to behave.
So I'm curious, since you are part of so much that is going on in Starkville, but growing up in Tibby, did Starkville seem really close, or was Starkville next door, or what was your relationship to Starkville?
I didn't even know anything about Starkville growing up in Tibby. That's how I didn't. I didn't know. I tell you when I'm telling you, I didn't know there was a Mississippi State University. No. we never took field trips to this university. No, ma'am. Um, the only times that I knew, I left right out of high school the summer I graduated from, and that was the last year they had an all black high school. And I went straight to Jackson State, which was primarily all African American. When I came back, I tried to find employment. I could not find employment, but it was only in that environment of West Point. So I did not know, to even search outside. So that is unusual, I know. But then I got a fantastic opportunity after I started. I worked in daycare. I was a supervisor, educational director for daycare for a few years. And that's when I really got introduced to Starkville because I supervised this county. And then later, the political science department here invited me to work on my master's in public administration. Dr. Feig and the guys, it was about 6 of us. And we came through the program, and I graduated in 83, I believe. It was like 83. Wonderful opportunity. And I received my master's here at Mississippi State, the school that was so close to me that I didn't know existed. And that's saying a lot, too, about the exposure that we had in all black schools, the opportunity. And so that's what, that it just, I don't know why every time. I want to see our black kids. I want to see them do so much more than, we had an opportunity to do. And that's why I work hard at whatever I do, because it's not fair that, they don't get the same opportunity. And I'm always, I guess, forcing stuff on them. I said, y'all go to the Black History Museum. And my grandson told me, Ganny, you took us to the Black History Museum. I said, you were about 4th or 5th grade, boy, you 9th grade now. And so, I just can't help it. Every opportunity I want to, anytime we did anything, I just went around and found children. Okay, let's go. I think it was a bus load of them to the Black History Museum up in Memphis that he reminded me of. But I think if you don't know your history, if you don't know your past, you will tend to repeat it. And I think it's so important that our children know from whence they came, and so that they will know how to get farther. Each generation should move a little bit farther. And that's why my little grandbaby Avalea goes out and pick the tomatoes out of the garden and fight Gruff off to help me get the dogs fed. And I want them to be exposed to, they don't have to be farmers, but know that that's where the basis of it all. Somebody has got to grow this stuff that's in Kroger and that's in Piggly Wigglies and so, and those goats. One day somebody gonna kill Gruff and cut him up and provide food on somebody's table. And she would have been there to help take care of it while she was growing meat for somebody to eat one day, very healthy meat. So I just see it in anything you do is to train young people in it. So I commend y'all for this craft program to help these young folks to get the historical perspective.
So may I ask one more question? So since I told you this a long time ago. Since I've been here, I've admired you from afar. Like I've always seen you, and I always wondered, who is this lady? She's like so dynamic, and she's always doing everything. And then to find out our connection was like, okay, mind blowing. But when you told me you were a goat farmer, I thought, well, how did you move from administration, doing like work, retirement, and into like what prompted you to go into goat farming?
Well, actually, when I decided to retire 5 years before 2017, I started really planning seriously about retirement. Uh, I'd like you say, I like to do, I like to move, I want to have a purpose for getting up every morning. I want to have something to share with someone else. And I said, ain't no way I can go home and sit down and clean up a house every day and cook. I don't like cooking anyway. And it's no way I'm going to do that. So I've got to figure out what can I do that I have a purpose to get up every morning and to contribute to society in some kind of a way. And then I love fishing. So I said I wanted a fishing pond. Well, I met, who was it, Brad Spencer, Orlando Trainer, and all those guys, and they introduced me to really the farming aspect of it. Oh, and I have about a 5-acre pasture that I wanted cleaned up too. And they said goats are the best things to clean up. Well, that's a lie. That's not true. Goats do not clean your pasture up. So anybody that's goat farming, don't let nobody trick you on that one. They tricked me on that one. But I got the goats because then the idea came that, we can have this as an inheritance for our children. My husband is elderly. He's not able to do really much of he started cooking the other day, so we were excited about that. But so we decided to do the farm aspect of it, which we're going to get into some cows and maybe chickens. But we wanted to do the farming aspect of it so that the children and grandchildren can benefit financially, that it can be extra income for them. And I love my home place, and I didn't want to see it just sold like my mom's place had to be. So that all the children agreed, and my son-in-laws, that we would work the farm together. So they come down and they help dehorn the goats, and they help deworm and give the dog shots and help with all of that. And that is their inheritance. We are basically setting it up for them to have perpetual income that can go into their family, that maybe they can pay for their children's college education. It's what we want to build it to go into. And so it just still evolved back to my basic philosophy is to see other people benefit and be able to grow and contribute themselves. So I went from people to animals.
That's great. I'm wondering who some of your role models were, because you're always pushing for other people and for opportunities. Like, who were some of the people who were pushing for that when you were coming up that inspired you?
Gosh. Well, like my teachers, at first, Miss Miller was my third grade teacher. And I used to use her as a password in a lot of stuff because I love Miss Miller. she was an old lady where she was a teacher, but she was that traditional looking teacher. You know, teachers now wear tight pants to school, and they don't dress. They dress like Kenya do. And so they did, but Miss Miller had on her old teacher's dress, you know, and so she just inspired me a lot. Miss Macklin was a high school, she was a teacher, but she kept everybody in line at Fifth Street. Everybody was scared of Miss Macklin. And all she had to do was stand there at that door, and you gonna walk down that hall like you had some sense, she said. You walk like you got some sense. So it was people like that, and Mr. White, and my teachers. I admired teachers. So I always wanted to be a teacher myself. And my degree was in elementary education. But I could not find a teacher's job. I said, you guys are missing out on the best teacher in the world if you don't hire me. But, you know, I think it was all in God's plan, because the path that I took, I mean, I have enjoyed my journey. I've enjoyed the social service, the experiences. I mean, it's been great. So I know it was God's will that I went in he wouldn't give me a teaching job, because I would have been confined in a classroom. I couldn't have had the diversity of experiences of going and doing and seeing. I mean, I could see it in students, but I mean, the impact of families, the growth I've seen in families and their children and children's children. So it's been exciting. So I thank God for the path that He led me to.
It sounds like you were a non-traditional teacher, but you were a teacher nonetheless.
Yes, that's a very good way of putting that. Because everything I go after, I get accused of you trying to teach me something. So yeah, I do. I get that all the time. Oh my goodness.
Since we've already jumped from like people to animals once, and you know, people and agriculture, maybe how did you learn to I mean, you have skills as a farmer. Did you learn some of those when you were younger?
Oh yeah, we had gardens, and mother made us. Yes, sir. We picked cotton, and we planted gardens, and we chopped gardens, and so a lot of the fruits and like we had pear trees and plum trees, and we had to put plums up and pears up, preserves, and absolutely. But most of the learning that like we had pigs and we had cows, but we've never had goats before. And so I had gotten 2 goats, Billy and Gruff, in 2017 to learn how to work with goats. I just believe in preparation. I just believe in planning, and so I was gonna, and so at about 20, I was gonna expand my herd because I had them neutered. I didn't want them to breed and you know, have other goats, because I wasn't ready for it. So but Gruff, Billy went to goat heaven, and I left Gruff, and then I got gifted 4 more goats, and so now I have 5 goats. I'm trying to sell those 5 goats because my goal is to get a boar and a nanny, a Nubian, and start off. Now that I know what to do with goats, I want to start off raising and breeding and raising meat goats. Is what our goal is, and then we want to eventually get off into the goat soap and the goat milk. I want to do milking also, but it will be a process. Is what I'm working on. I don't want to do it all at once, but we got to get rid of the 5 that we have, and then, you know, move on to start breeding the pure Nubians. So we have right now our 5. We got Gruff, Old Man, Twin 1, Twin 2, and SN. And SN is special needs. He bows his head a lot. So we got a special needs. So we want to get rid of those and then start with the and we have 2 Gray Pyrenees dogs that they were little babies a little bit ago, and now they are like 9 weeks old, and they are huge, and they are Benji and Rover. So they are like pets now, I guess.
Braxton, do you have a final question?
Yes, I couldn't think of any more.
He can't think of any more.
And do you have something that we haven't talked about that you think is really important to say?
Do y'all have any questions for me, grandchildren? Think about it for a minute, and then I'm going to say this, but each of you will have a question for me. I'm still teaching. I thank you guys for this opportunity to share my. I'm sorry, I tear just flows whenever you start talking about families and sharing and helping people become the best that they can be. I just it's so personable to me. I guess it's so close to my heart that I've done several TV interviews, and same thing happens. And I worked 43 years in the community and in public, and it just will not stop. I have tried my best, but and then you see how fast I bounce back. Like, it's just when that subject hits, I can't even control it. I might need some psychiatric help, huh? But Braxton, don't you think I need it just happens. I love people, and I love to see people be able to move from one level to the next. You know, you don't have to stay down. You can get up. Everybody has that same opportunity of getting up, but we just got to know how to help them get up. RJ, what was your question?
How would you like the next generation of children to help out in their community?
Very good question. Y'all better beat him. I'd like to see your generation help contribute to make the community a better place. Help people understand you don't have to sell drugs or do anything illegal to get ahead. That you prepare yourself, go to school. You got to learn how to read, write, and do arithmetic. You got to do those things. So prepare yourself. And then the sky is unlimited how far you can go in life. So help people understand that. And then by you being that role model, you study hard in school, you move on, you do the right thing, and then people will follow you. Even if they don't, you still do what's right.
What was your favorite thing about teaching children in the school system?
Actually, I never taught in the school system as a former teacher. I like teaching adults because when I would tell adults things like they thought the only way you could discipline children was to use a belt. and beat on them. Especially if a child is already crying, they say, I just have to get the belt and I have to whip them. Don't you know when you hit a person, they're already crying, that's not going to stop them from crying. They're probably going to cry louder because it's painful and it hurts. So try some other things. You can ignore them. You can ask them to step in the other inside of you where you are hurting my ears. So if you need to cry, go off to yourself and cry. And I had parents would actually try those things. So they would say, you know, that works. They cried until they got tired and it worked. And so there are techniques that you can use. So that was my favorite thing about teaching parents, to see a light bulb come on and for them to know that there are other ways than child abuse. Avalea, did you come up with the question? Oh no, you got to. You can't let the two of them do it to you. Just a simple one. I don't want them to say, you didn't even have a question. You know, they're going to joke you about it. Y'all help her. Give her suggestion, support.
Did you like growing up in the country?
I loved growing up in the country. That's a great question. I would not live in the city. I thought about moving to San Diego, my husband and I, back in 76. And, thank God we did not make that move. I basically, when we got married, I lived in the city maybe a couple of years or so, but I love the country. I love going out there in that pasture. I love cutting that grass. I love the space. I don't like for a house to be right next door to me. So I absolutely love the country. Thank you for that question.
Braxton, do you have any final questions? No.
Oh, you've got to come up with one now, actually.
Right.
Oh, that's right, Braxton.
It's only fair.
Come up with one. All this talking I've done, I know it's something was very left unsaid, unclear.
What was one of your favorite experiences over the years?
Oh, favorite experience. You came up with a good one, Braxton. Gosh, I've had so many wonderful experiences. You know, the one that came to mind was we went to Florida on a Girl Scout trip one time, and I had never didn't know a lot about the Holocaust, and we went to that museum down there, and I saw they had a picture of a little girl trying to climb through a fence. And that picture just stays on my mind. And where she was being shot, trying to get away from all the murdering and the terrible things that happened during the Holocaust. And we were on a bus, and when I got back on that bus, I never knew any other group. I didn't know Jews had gone through so much. So it's not only black people that have suffered and gone through so much turmoil and unfair treatment. And that was, I guess it shocked me. So that came to my mind when you asked me that question about an experience is seeing pictures of the Holocaust.
so much for taking the time to speak with us. And I know that, you know, if you gave yourself like free reign to talk, we could be here all day because you have so many things to say, and so many stories to share. But it's been such a good opportunity, and I'm so grateful that we've been able to have a chance to speak with you. Oh, you were saying that?
Well, yeah, I was just saying absolutely. Thank
Well.
you so much. Because, you know, on a Friday evening, you could be doing any other thing, Friday afternoon, but you came to help us out, and we absolutely appreciate it.
Well, you're quite welcome. I appreciate the opportunity. I love to do things like this. I do.
Okay.